Many people dream of owning lands, houses, and condominium units. Many of them have worked hard in order to afford these real estate properties. There have been many laws stating how persons can acquire such properties, such as the Presidential Decree number 957, known as the Subdivision and Condominium Buyers Protective Decree. Under this decree, it is the policy of the state to afford people decent human settlement and provide them with opportunities for improving their quality of life by closely supervising and regulating real estate businesses and imposing penalties on fraudulent practices and manipulations. However, there are some people who are still duped into purchasing properties from scrupulous real estate businesses, buying houses and condominiums from developers without seeing it completed. With that in mind, what government agencies are in charge of implementing laws such as the Presidential Decree 957? What other laws state how people can own properties? Good evening. You're watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News channel. This show is about making the law work for you by giving legal advice on topics that matter to you. I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno.
And I'm Attorney Nepomuceno. Tonight, we will discuss your legal rights on the topic of real estate law, what you need to know when buying or selling a property here in the Philippines.
Our guest for tonight is Attorney Voltaire Duano, law practitioner and professor at PUP and San Sebastian Recoletos College of Law.
Yeah, Attorney. Good evening, Attorney Volts.
Good evening, Attorney Karen and Attorney Rod.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. You know, this is one topic that I'm really very interested in. Kasi when people ask me for legal advice, it's normally involving real estate property.
Yes.
You know? So
especially now where there's so many pre-selling diba, ng mga condominiums and even subdivision lots. And I've been approached several times as well about, for instance, yung mga developers na hindi naman, delayed, kunwari. They keep saying that they will deliver the completed condominium unit by 2013, and then 2013 na, they don't even see that it's nearing the finishing part of the project. So, I guess it's a good time for us to discuss what their rights are.
Yeah.
And I guess we can start with residential muna.
Yeah.
Attorney Volts, what laws can protect all of these buyers of residential properties? Kasama na dyan yung mga subdivision lots, condominium units, house and lots?
Attorney Karen, before I answer your question, we have learned in law school that there's a Latin term, caveat emptor. So,
and it means?
It simply means let the buyer beware. So for us to be buyer and to be vigilant of our rights, there are certain laws that protects them. Like we have here, as you have stated in the introduction, we have the Presidential Decree 957, which is known as the Subdivision and a Condominium Buyers Protective Decree. And we have the so-called Realty Installments Buyer Act, the Maceda Law.
Maceda Law, yes.
And the general provisions of the Civil Code and also the Condominium Act. And the rest are spread in different various laws.
Okay.
Now, in terms of yung, there are various requirements, as we know, no? Just like any other contract, you know, in your buying or selling or transacting and selling something. When it comes to real estate, it being a real contract, it has more requirements, diba? In terms of documentation, taxes that have to be paid, and all that. So maybe let's take it one by one. First of all, who can buy real estate lands? I mean, we all know that there are certain restrictions when it comes to foreigners. Can you elaborate?
I'll mention one restriction.
Yes.
One, foreigners cannot own land.
You should know that.
I should know because I'm married to an American. So you cannot, they cannot, Americans, for any foreigners, non-Filipinos, they cannot buy land in the Philippines. Meaning, they cannot own house and lots. So usually if they're married to a Filipina, it has to be their wife who buys the property. So
may qualification ba yan? I mean, like for example,
but for condominiums, I guess you can also expound on that, Attorney Volts.
Yes,
can foreigners and also buy condominiums?
Generally, all Filipinos can acquire properties here. Aliens, subject to certain exceptions. If you're a former Filipino citizen, you can acquire property. There is a special
so ito
here.
Yung mga balikbayans.
Yes.
So if you're a former Filipino citizen, even if you don't have dual citizenship,
yes.
even let's say you remain American or Singaporean or whatever, you can still buy land.
Yes, we have
Right.
a special law here implementing the provision of the Constitution. And you can find that in Batas Pambansa 185.
Okay.
There are certain limitations that former Filipino citizen can acquire a property. If it is if it is located in urban, they can only acquire 1,000 square meters. And
Okay.
if it is located in rural, only 1 hectare.
All right. So to certain.
Provided they will be
Should
residing
remember
here.
that. Okay.
Provided they're residing here. So
They're
if
going to reside.
If they've already waived their Filipino citizenship, they're abroad, they
Yes.
cannot buy real estate property.
There are certain requirements like because they will have to execute an affidavit stating that there is a commitment for them that they will be staying here.
Right. Okay.
So it usually happens when they retire.
All right.
When it comes to foreigners, how much condominium units can they own? Because
Yeah.
they can buy condominium units, right? Maybe we can also talk about yung mga restrictions.
Yes, we can find that in Republic Act 4726, that's the Condominium Act. That's one of the exceptions where an alien can acquire properties here. Because technically, it's not the members of the condominium corporation that owns the land. It's the condominium corporation. That's the reason why foreigners can own that. Of course, when you sell shares from the condominium corporation, you cannot buy a unit in the condominium corporation without owning shares in the condominium corporation. So it should not exceed 40%.
So to
Meaning
some
yung
extent,
total ownership ng
Yes.
condominium. Yeah.
The A for
And another
everything.
exception would be if the condominium development does not have a condominium corporation. Meaning, kung yung mga bibili ng ng units dun sa condominium project will become co-owners of the land, then bawal silang bumili. Foreigners cannot buy condominium units in that project. Right?
Okay, so there are a number of questions regarding when you say Filipino ownership, diba? I mean, like for example, corporations, they can own, let's say, Philippine corporations which have foreign ownership, let's say up to the extent of 40%, can own land, right?
Yes.
So,
yes.
so to some extent, let's say if there's a foreigner, let's say Evan, the husband of Karen, owns a corporation here and owns 40% of a corporation. That corporation can own land, right?
Actually, it's more on very explicit on condominium corporation.
Okay.
It's one of the exceptions because if it is because technically it's not the corporation that owns,
Yes.
but there's actually a gray issue on that. If it is not a condominium, there is a gray issue because it would be indirectly violating the provision of the Constitution.
Yeah. But then if it's considered a Filipino corporation,
Yeah.
if it's 60%
Yeah.
Filipino owned and then only 40% owners, kahit hindi condominium, they can buy,
land,
as long as it's a Filipino corporation, 60% Filipino owned yung
Yeah,
ownership.
Yes, I think what Attorney Karen is saying is the control test.
The control
Yes,
test, yeah,
oo.
yes.
Sige. Now,
sige.
let's move on to what agencies can you approach naman in the government? Just in case, kunwari, you're one of those buyers in a pre-selling who was not able to get the condominium on the promised deadline, but yet you paid all your down payments. Which government agency can you approach for this?
The government agency concerned is actually the Housing Land Use Regulatory Board.
HLURB.
Yes, HLURB. That is from where they have to verify all details regarding the project, whether it is a condominium or a subdivision. Because from there, they can see the records, the track records of this realtor.
Kasi you cannot develop without getting the clearance
Yes.
from HLURB, right? So,
And Attorney Volts, do they already have to hire a lawyer when you file the complaint with the HLURB against a subdivision developer or against a condominium developer?
Yes, if they are already initiating a case, they have to be represented by counsel. Unless they can protect themselves, they know how to go about with the procedure. But if they will just simply inquiring regarding certain documents, they can do it by themselves without engaging a
ang
lawyer.
HLURB is quasi-judicial, no? So it
Yes.
will go through kind of a judicial process to determine who's right or who's wrong, right?
Yes, it has a adjudicatory power. It can administrative functions.
Okay.
Okay.
Now I'd like to go back to the requirements for buying property.
Yeah, okay.
So, in terms of who, we already know na it's generally Filipinos, foreigners, may exceptions lang. But then, in terms of the documents, does it have to be written? Ilang beses nito sa akin tinatanong pwede ba akong bumili ng lupa ng walang kasulatan,
Oral,
if there's
oral,
really no contract, is that allowed?
Of course, the best evidence should be in writing. If it is oral, among lawyers, there's a technical issue there. That's an enforceable contract.
Yes.
So it has to be reduced into writing.
Okay, so this is something that we should tell people, no, that if you're buying property, you really have to insist. If it's land, you really have to insist that there's a written contract para maging enforceable yung sales
Now,
contract.
pwede bang it's a private contract between two parties, no? And then let's say it's not notarized. Okay, ano yung repercussions nun? Let's say, I've seen a lot of transactions like that na parang it's between two parties lang and it was not notarized, wasn't registered. I understand there are certain acknowledgement requirements sa mga documents covering real estate.
Actually, for purposes of registration, it should be a public instrument.
Okay.
But although it is a private instrument, that's actually binding between
It's
the
binding
parties.
between the parties, but not binding against the world, right?
Against the third party,
Third
yes,
party,
that's correct.
yes.
Meaning,
So
yeah.
importante, when you have transactions involving real estate, it's very important that you have it notarized, right?
Yes,
So
yes.
it has to be a public document.
But in case you bought property, real property meaning land or house and lot, or even condominium units, and it was not notarized, the seller cannot use as a defense na hindi notarized to say that your contract was not valid. It's still a valid contract, except that syempre, for your protection, it has to be in a public document para hindi niya mabenta yung property ulit. Okay.
Now, for example, in that situation, no, it's a private document, not notarized. I then resell it. Kunyari, I sold it to you, private document, not notarized. Then I sell it to Karen. All right, and then Karen gets it and was going to file to have it registered. In that scenario, it doesn't bind Karen, right? Our private document doesn't bind Karen. Is that correct?
No, because
It
once you have acquired the property, although it is by virtue of private instrument, you can sell it because that's your right.
Yeah.
You already acquired the.
No, in this case, I sold it. I sold it to you, and then in another document, I sell it to Karen again.
So you mean double sale?
Double sale, yeah.
In case of double sale, it's another thing. There are issues. Whoever is the first possessor, in good faith, so he's the one who's going to.
Alright.
Unless.
So if I already knew about your transaction, even if your contract of sale was not notarized, I'm a buyer in bad faith, and I'll basically, in this case, lose the right to get the property from you.
It's only when you're in good faith that yun. All right. Okay. All right. So we have. Do you have questions? All right. There's a question from Jeff. My fiance and I are looking into buying a house, but we don't know the requirements or the steps. Are there any? How do we make sure that the real estate company is a reliable one? I've heard from friends and coworkers that even the most well-known companies are prone to problems, especially when it comes to payments of the buyer. And so I guess this person wants to buy.
So
I
first
guess a condo.
question is the requirements.
What are the requirements?
Actually, Jeff, you have to first verify. You have to conduct the due diligence here by going to the Housing Land Use and Regulatory Board. That is for purposes of determining what kind of project or condominium that you are going to buy. Because the documents are already in the possession of the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board. Whether they have the authority to sell, whether the project has been registered,
Okay.
those are important.
And his question
things.
was kung reliable, no? So this is something he can verify with the HLURB.
Yes, that's
And he
correct.
can, I guess, as a practical matter, Jeff can also check previous projects of this developer. If this is their first project, I guess it's safer kung malaman mo that this is their third or fourth project. And in terms of requirements, they have to, I guess it's advisable to ask them to have, of course, a written contract of sale and to have it notarized.
In terms of the title, kunyari, if it's a subdivision land, he needs to ask for the TCT, the Transfer Certificate of Title. The owner's copy of the TCT, correct? That
Yes.
would be best.
Actually, all of the documents has been submitted with HLRB. That includes the title, the name of the corporation, the
Okay.
persons responsible. They can see that everything for the HLRB.
I guess I have to add pala to Jeff. Jeff, as part of yung tinatawag ni Attorney Volts na due diligence, that means do your research. When you check the title, make sure walang naka-annotate na previous owner or that this title has already been mortgaged by the condominium corporation. Because
Encumbered, yes.
kung na-mortgage na nila yan, you can ask the developer to discharge or tanggalin yung mortgage when you buy it from them or before you buy it from them. Para you get a very clean title.
Correct.
Okay. Our next question is from Joanne Patricia. My family is renting the land that our house is on. We are paying the real property tax. Is it right that we are the ones paying for it even if we don't own the property?
Actually, it should be the owner that should pay the real property. But I don't see any...
It can be passed on, I guess.
Yes, it can be passed on.
Contractually, they can agree na it's passed on, right?
So there's really nothing illegal about their
nothing
arrangement.
illegal, yeah.
Oo. Although of course, they can ask yung lessor kung pwede bang siya na lang magbayad.
Yes.
All right. Now, we have a question naman from Ariane, and here's a question. My fiance's mom passed away a couple of weeks ago. He tried to look for the original copy of the TCT, owner's duplicate of their house, but was unable to find it. What he only found was a certified true copy of the TCT. My questions are, how can he obtain an original copy from the Registry of Deeds? And two, what are the requirements? Is the original copy required for dividing the property among the siblings by intestate estate? Or is the certified true copy sufficient for him to proceed with the extrajudicial settlement of the estate? So, actually,
Daming questions.
but,
Kasama na yung settlement of estate.
okay.
And
But I think
of
it's
course,
the main question is
The lost title.
yeah, the lost
Lost
title. They
title,
only have
yes.
an original, not an original, but they have a certified true
Certified.
copy.
Ariane, what you can do here is that you need a lawyer because the lawyer will file a reconstitution. In the event you cannot produce the duplicate original anymore by reason that it has been lost. Because that would be needing in the event that the property will be divided and subsequently transferred among the heirs. But for purposes of extrajudicial settlement, there is no need for the original title because that can be
Contractual.
that can be referred. Certified true copy will do.
Kasi when you can do an extrajudicial settlement contractually, although even if the title hasn't really passed. Now,
Yes.
unless they want to subdivide it and have multiple titles, diba? Split the mother title, right? That's the
that's
only
correct.
time they would need it. But otherwise, a contract of extrajudicial settlement is valid and binding among the parties.
Yes.
Right? Correct. All right.
Okay, we have another question from Charo. My mother transferred half of her lot to my brother by deed of donation a few years back. Now my brother is currently working in Singapore and is now a Singaporean citizen. Can he still be considered the owner of the land now that he is no longer a Filipino citizen? Can he still build a house on it? He renounced his Filipino citizenship as part of the requirement for him to be a Singaporean citizen.
Okay, you were
Charo,
mentioning
So
that
this is
earlier.
one of
Yeah.
those scenarios na former Filipino citizen.
I think, Charo, your brother was not divested of the ownership of the property because he acquired it at the time that he was still a Filipino. And being an owner, he can still construct whatever improvements he wants on the property.
And it doesn't matter if it's more than 1,000 square meters.
Yes.
All right.
So what's really affected if you become a foreigner is your ability to buy property after. Meaning, as a former Filipino citizen, for instance, the brother of Charo, limited na yung amount of
Yes.
land na pwede niya bilhin and he has to execute that affidavit saying that he will be living in the Philippines. But for previously owned properties, they would not lose ownership.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Lydia sent us this question. The house and lot I'm interested in buying is still mortgaged with a certain housing company. However, due to unpaid obligations, the said property might be assessed for foreclosure. Now, the current owner is selling it to me. Is it legal to sell a foreclosed property, even if it's still in mortgage?
Actually, it's very risky to buy a property that's been foreclosed. But unless the property has been consolidated with a new owner, I think you can still sell it, but subject to the encumbrance. Because real estate mortgage is a real right that carries with it with the property.
So as long as there was no foreclosure sale yet.
Yes. But the question says it has been foreclosed.
It's may, oo nga eh.
Oo
So
nga
baka
eh.
may ano na, may
That's
nagbayad-
very dangerous.
Oo nga eh.
Oo nga.
Oo.
Yeah. I guess we have to explain to them na if it's mortgage property, kaya kanina yung isang question na natin, I was advising, look at the title because kung may mortgage yan, kahit mabili mo pa, if the borrower, kung sinong nagsanla ng property, sells it, then that property will be subject to foreclosure proceedings kahit wala kayong kinalaman dun sa utang related to that property. Yeah.
Alright.
So a lot of interesting questions.
Yes,
So
definitely.
we'll be talking to you more, Attorney Volts. We'll take a short break for now. Legal Help Desk will return after these messages. When selling or buying a property, the selling price of the said property is not the only thing you have to consider or save up for. There are taxes and fees to consider because these costs affect the total selling price. In order to avoid problems in the future, the deed of sale must mention the parties involved and in charge of shouldering the costs. Here are the taxes to be paid by the seller. Capital gains tax, which is 6% of the selling price. Business tax, where the applicable rates depend on the local government unit where the property is located. The taxes and fees to be paid by the buyer are the following. Documentary stamps tax, which is 1.5% of the selling price. Transfer tax, where the rates depend on the location of the property but ranges from 0.25% to 0.75%. A registration fee, where the graduated rate is based on the selling price. The realty taxes, which should be paid on the remaining months of the year based on the date of full payment. So when you plan on buying a property, consider these fees and taxes, and save a little extra money in order to pay for these. You're still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel, and we are still joined by our guest, Attorney Voltaire Duano.
Yeah. So, Attorney Volts, let's go back to the foreign issue, no? The mga foreigners. They cannot buy, but they can get into long-term leases, di ba?
Yes.
What are the restrictions to that?
We actually have a Lease Investment Act.
Okay.
They can lease the property for a period of 50 years, provided that this property will be used for investment purposes.
Okay.
And this is subject to extension upon mutual agreement of the parties for another 25
years.
Yes.
All right. And then,
My other question that I always hear from several friends, especially those who buy condominium units, they usually complain about the standards of the units that they get. They usually say, parang during the pre-selling period, yung promise sa amin is like this, na parang mas malaki yung easement papunta, yung meaning mas malalaki yung hallways, or malaki dapat yung kitchen, but then it was not according to the standards.
Yeah.
What if you end up buying property that did not meet the standards that were promised to you? Where can you go to complain?
Actually, Attorney Karen, that's a violation of Presidential Decree 957 because it would appear that on the specifications stated in the leaflets, in the brochures, documents, etc., there would be some sort of misrepresentation in that case. And that is actually a criminal offense because there is a penal provision on PD 957. So either they can initiate a criminal case before the city prosecutor's office where the property is located.
Okay, so they can go directly to the regional trial court, sa court. Oh.
Yes.
And then what other options?
And then they
do you
can
have?
file administrative case against the realtor.
Okay, so two options. Criminal case, we can go to court, or administrative case against a developer sa HLURB.
Because that would constitute a unsound real state business practice.
Can you cancel the contract? Can you say, ayoko na yung, upon delivery you say, it doesn't meet the standards, I want to cancel the contract and then just give me a refund?
Yes, because that's a substantial violation of the contract.
yeah,
Okay.
that's a problem minsan pag maganda masyado yung mga
Oh,
sample
yung
sample
drawing,
units, yung mga,
yes,
di ba?
yeah.
Di ba? They're so nice, di ba? Wow, and then you expect it to be like that, and after a while you're gonna get a box.
That's
So now let's go to there's also exceptions to owning when it comes to mga industrial estates, mga companies that are in agro-industrial, in terms of the lease period. These are longer, di ba? I understand from the Investments Act.
Yes,
The lease for all our potential investors out there, mga foreign investors. Although, kasi this becomes kind of a restrictive law when it comes to investments. But these investors who invest in mga ganun, industrial estates, they can stay longer, right?
Yes. As far as for lease purposes.
Okay.
So, the longest is 75 years.
75 years. All right. Okay. So, siguro naman, within that period, medyo nabawi mo na yung capital mo, no? So,
Yes, yes.
all right.
Yes.
Okay.
And what if, for instance, you're one of those condominium owners or subdivision lot owners that have a reason to cancel the contract, but the developer refuses to give you a refund? What's the procedure in terms of getting your money back?
Actually, if you can prove the substantial violation, you have the right to rescind. But of course, you have to go to filing a case. And then you have to prove your case by stating that there is actually a ground to cause the cancellation of the contract, such as the substantive violation of the contract of sale.
So if you want to go to the HLURB, the only thing you can file there is an administrative case.
Yes.
But for getting a refund that the developer refuses to give to you, you have to go to court.
Refund is also within the jurisdiction of the HLURB.
Okay.
All right.
So you can choose either
Yes.
of the two remedies.
Now, Attorney Volts, there's a lot of people also asking, when does ownership vest? I mean, lalo na in situations where we have a contract and the provisions of the contract provide for an installment basis payment. Let's say you and I, and then the payment is over 5 years. If I sold it to you on installment, can you already, for example, mortgage that property, or can you sell it even if it's under installment? So what are the laws there when it comes to parang the vesting ba of ownership between myself and you?
Actually, for the better understanding of our viewers, it's important for them to know the distinction between what is a contract of sale and contract to sell.
Okay.
When we talk about contract to sell, it means that the ownership will only vest from the full payment. But when we talk of contract of sale, it presumes that the property has been fully paid. But even a particular contract has been designated, whether it's a contract of sale or contract to sell. If there is actually no reservation as to the ownership, that will be considered as a absolute sale.
A consummated sale.
Yes, an absolute sale.
Where upon the signing of the parties,
Which the ownership will vest.
Already
I can
vest.
give inputs here kasi sales is actually one of the subjects I taught at UP College of Law.
All right.
So just to simplify what Attorney Vaught said, if the contract does not state na that the ownership will only transfer upon full payment, pagka nag-sign kayo ng contract of sale, as soon as you sign the contract of sale, ownership is transferred. When you move into the house or occupy the land and start building there, sa'yo na yung property na yun, kahit hindi ka pa fully paid. So what the seller can do, if you don't fully pay, is not to take the property away from you, but to file a case against you for complete payment.
All right. Okay. All right, clear. So we have questions. Thank you very much, Attorney Guy. And we have questions. We'll continue answering these questions, and we'll start with a caller. Hello, Manuel.
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Yes. Hi.
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, sir.
Yes, do you have a question,
Yes,
Manuel?
sir. Can you just put a point in not my family, sir, for animosity? Only my name, sir.
Oh,
Only my name.
only your name. Maybe you can turn down your TV set a bit because there's feedback.
I'm asking your legal opinion
Yes,
because, you know, sir,
yes.
in our subdivision,
Okay.
we are paying this our home lot for last 25 years.
Okay.
This is a private subdivision.
All right.
Why is it that in a public subdivision there were spaces provided as open spaces?
Open spaces. Is that correct? Did we
and
get you
for
correctly?
these homeowners to enjoy.
Oh, yes. So your question is the subdivision
As reservation
developer.
for parks.
Yes. Is your question? Are you questioning the fact that the subdivision developer did not follow the open spaces required by law?
No, sir. There are existing open
Okay.
spaces.
Yes. What is your
But
question, sir?
we have noticed and we have heard that the local government will put up school.
Oh, yeah. So, Attorney Volz, I think what the question is that there are provisions under the law which requires open spaces, and then now the local government is putting a school in those open spaces.
Actually, in the private subdivision, there are certain areas there that can be donated to the local government.
Okay.
But like the roads, those are the usual spaces that being donated to the local government. Because you can see even the private subdivision, the local governments pay for the electricity because they have posts there.
Posts, yeah.
So those are the usual spaces that can be donated to the local governments. I don't know if that is what he's referring to, but if he's referring to a property that has not been donated to the local government and the local government is constructing a public school there, I think there is a violation. Unless the local government would expropriate that.
All right.
Oo. By expropriation, ang ibig sabihin nito, this is the process under the law where the government has to buy the property from the subdivision, meaning they can't just take it away and start building a school there without buying it from the subdivision. And also, this requires a procedure. They can't just do it overnight and say, we're getting this and building a school here. It has to go through court proceedings, diba? What they call expropriation proceedings, meaning they have to prove the
That
need,
it's the
the
necessity.
necessity,
of that,
yes, to use that lot or land for building a school. And they have to pay just compensation, meaning the price has to be really, it has to be just, meaning hindi pwedeng makakuha sila ng malaking discount just because they're the local government.
Not necessarily fair market value, but it could be lower, di ba? It could be lower than fair market value, but just fair. It's
Just compensation. They have to prove that in
They
a
have to prove
trial.
that.
Tsaka may assessors, di ba,
May
during the
assessors.
trial.
Alright.
So, it shouldn't be a overnight bigla na lang sila nagtatayo ng something there.
Alright.
I hope we answered this question.
I hope we answered your question, Manuel. Okay, there's another question
We have
from
another
Danica. Yeah.
question from Danica. My parents bought a townhouse and have been living there for almost 3 years. A year ago, they've discovered a lot of problems with the house, such as leaking plumbing, clogged toilets, and a busted pipe, to name a few. Though the developer has been sending the repairman to fix the problem, it has been one inconvenience on top of the other. Can my parents claim damages because of the hassle and hazard this has caused them?
That's what we were talking about earlier, right?
Condominiums, and then
condos
this
that
is
you
a
buy.
townhouse.
Yeah.
I think, Danica, yes, you can claim for damages, but you also have to consult your contract, whether it is within the warranty. Because there are issues involving specification that violated by the developer and the contractor. So they can file a case against the developer and the contractor.
So to some extent, it requires a little bit of evidence. Kasi he didn't mention how many years he stayed. Did he state how many years? Kasi kung
3 years.
medyo, 3 years. Kung 3 years, it should be still under the warranty.
Kasi
right?
they have to consider the fact na sometimes there's the normal wear and tear.
Yes, there you go.
Depending on how you use the property. But if it's normal use and then you can prove that the defects were really from the start, parang substandard yung paggawa nila ng townhouse, then maybe they can really complain against the developer.
Right.
But I'd like to add the question pala, paano yung mga contracts na nakalagay lagi as is, where is? When they sell that, does that mean that the seller of the house and lot
Doesn't warrant.
exactly is warranting na whatever it is, kahit may mga sira yan, ikaw na bahala?
Yes, I don't see any reason because you're aware of the
That condition.
condition.
So it goes back to what you said
Yes.
from the start, caveat emptor, buyers beware.
Yes.
Pag ganun yung nasa kontrata, then be careful.
Yeah, it's very
no?
important
Because-
that, especially if you're the buyer, no, it's very important that you really read the terms and conditions of the contract, because yun nga, caveat emptor. All right, we have another question from Mark Francis Mahusay, and he asks, can a condo buyer get a refund if he cancels the contract but has paid 30 months? Yan, I guess in this case, he paid 30 months na.
is over 2 years. 24, so 2.5 years.
2.5 years na nagbayad, I guess for foreclose, can he cancel the
Actually,
purchase?
if he has a ground to cancel that, because if he has defaulted in paying the monthly amortization, I think it's the realtor that can cancel that.
Yeah.
What about since he's already paid for the installments for the past 30 months? Can he get any form of refund for canceling the contract?
Granting that his cancellation is meritorious, initially, he has a period, the law allows him a grace period to pay that. But unless he has the ground to cancel that, he cannot cancel that. But just for the sake of canceling it.
So you mean, basta lang nagbago yung isip niya,
Yes.
ayaw niya nang bilihin, he cannot get a refund of any of the installments he had already paid?
Yes, in that case, he's the one who's
Already bound
violating.
him. He signed a contract.
Although I'd
already
like to
bound
add,
him,
if in this case, if Francis has a reason to cancel the contract, meaning the condominium was late in the development or meron silang substantial deviation, meaning they violated what they promised to the buyer, he can cancel the contract. And since he has already paid 30 months, if there's reasonable ground to cancel, he can get full refund.
Yes, with interest, even
Yeah,
with
with
interest.
But even with interest.
Ah,
Okay.
Beautiful.
Sige.
All right.
And then we have another question from Tony. I bought an untitled coastal property in Palawan. I have the deed of sale from the previous owners and the copies of previous deeds of sale from previous owners with sketch of the property. This October, we planned on putting a fencing to the property so that we can file a tax declaration on the property and eventually file an application for a title. We just found out that apparently someone has already filed a title and has complete papers to our property and is now planning to build something there. My question is, how did this happen? In what case do we have to make a rightful claim of the property we bought in 2005?
Oh, interesting. Huh?
Paano
So
po yan?
when he bought it, he saw all of the titles of previous owners pa. And then now it's already...
Someone shows up,
someone shows
may
up with the
titles din
title.
siya,
Yeah.
yes.
Tony has a big problem here because
May double
what he can do is that he can file a case for damages against the one who sold it to him. But given the circumstance that the title has been transferred to another one, unless it is within the prescriptive period of 1 year from the time it was transferred and there is fraud, I think he can still go after the title.
As long as he should find out if there was fraud indeed.
Yes,
Okay.
but if it was transferred to a purchaser in good faith and for value, I don't think he can still go after the property. He can file a suit for damages.
Okay.
Actually, yun yung lagi ko rin-remind sa mga people who buy property. Even if you're in good faith, meaning you don't see any defect and you did your due diligence, make sure that you register right away. If it's land or house and lot or basta real property, real estate, register right away because it's the first to register that has the better right,
Better
diba?
right,
In case the original owner sells it to two people.
Kasi you have to disprove that. When you have a
Yes,
title, you
yeah.
have to disprove that. And it's a little tougher, diba? So you have to be very diligent, as Karen said.
We have another question now from Michael Thomas, and he asks, I'm an American with a Filipina wife who owns a condominium unit here in the Philippines. What will happen if she dies? Can I inherit it?
Good question. Good question. Might be...
Baka
yeah,
husband ko to,
baka
Kunwari pa siya.
Might be your husband,
Ibang-
ha?
Ibang name naman. Me die.
So Evan is trying to find
Oo nga
out something there. Okay.
Yes, he can inherit because that's one of the exception under the Constitution. Hereditary succession.
Okay.
So I hope we're not giving
All right,
ideas
don't-
to
your
but
husband.
foreigners out there, you can't kill your wives to get their property, okay?
That's interesting. All right. Our next question is from Manuel, who asks, Hi, I just want to ask your advice regarding buying real estate property. It is my first time to engage in real estate transaction. I found a property online and I personally visited the property. I haven't asked for a copy of the TCT yet. My concern is the owner of the property is abroad and I only met the daughter. I have read in other forums to avoid dealing with SPAs or special power of attorneys, but in this case, I don't have any choice. How can I make sure that the owner is really selling the property? Should I ask for a consularized special power of attorney? What other documents should I ask from the daughter seller?
Yes, it's also safe if you would be asking an SPA that has been duly authenticated before the Philippine consulate. But I think he has to be very, very careful in dealing with this kind of property because the owner is abroad. If possible, he can ask the owner to go here.
Or maybe, yeah. If he calls, baka it can be a fake
Yes.
ano rin on the line. No? Yeah,
Yeah.
ideally, not if it's a big property, I think ideally the owner should come here. No?
Yes, yes.
That's always best.
And again, diba, what we keep repeating here, buyer beware, because especially in these cases, it's really up to you to protect yourself. Wala kang pwedeng sisihin if you find out later on that the buyer abroad really did not authorize the sale.
Correct.
And he mentioned pinapakitaan lang siya ng copy nung TCT. It's better for her to personally, him or her,
Yeah.
to this potential buyer, to personally go to the Register of Deeds and look at the title there. Kasi minsan may discrepancy between yung nandun sa Register of Deeds and the copy that's being shown to you by the person selling it.
All right.
Very interesting topic
Yeah,
talaga.
so many questions. All right.
Yes. So now we have to take a short break. But before that, we'd like to thank our guest, Attorney Voltaire Duano. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Wow, so such a short time, no?
Thank you for
time
having
the slide. Thank you very much, Attorney Volts.
Thank you.
So Legal Help Desk will return after these reminders. You're still watching Legal Help Desk on the Solar News Channel. Today we had a very interesting
topic. Because I don't know about you, but personally, this is probably the one topic that I get in terms of people asking for legal advice. It normally involves real property, inherited property, or they're leasing or purchase, and then they would have a problem with when they buy a condo, may mga problema.
Ako, I've noticed there's usually a lot of complaints if it's at the pre-selling stage because there's always a lot of issues about one, yung compliance with what's agreed upon.
Yeah.
When's the delivery date?
Yeah.
Tsaka the quality of what you're really getting, the specifications. Because
Yes.
sometimes, as you said, minsan ang ganda-ganda ng pictures or ng model units.
Model unit, yeah,
And
yeah.
then once it's delivered to
Yeah.
them, they have all of these complaints na doesn't really look like what they promised us. So what we learned today was, one, if you experience problems like that with developers, whether it's related to a condominium development or a subdivision development, you can always go to the HLURB. One, you can inquire with them what type of remedies you have. If you don't have a lawyer or can't afford one, that's a good place to start. Go to the HLURB because they're the kind of what you call the supervising government agency when it comes to real estate development.
They oversee, HLURB oversees the standards and the rules and regulations with regard to development of property and condominiums. So from there, you can actually seek redress sa HLURB.
And I guess as a practical tip, if you don't want, of course, to spend a lot of money right away on hiring a lawyer and all the legal fees, again, try the HLURB first because they even have this, usually they can even contact the developer first and then they can have like a mediation in a sense. So baka from there pa lang, since they get their license from the HLURB, there's also a pressure on them to cooperate and hear you out kung ano ba yung issues nyo, ano yung complaints, and then they have a duty to address what complaints you have as a buyer.
And also, it's important to stress, when you are dealing in real property, especially in selling a real property, it's quite important to have it notarized. And why? Because if it's between, it is a real contract, and what that really means is that if you, Party A and Party B, enter into this private contract without it being notarized, it's only binding between the parties, meaning you can basically counter, or should I say, protect your rights vis-a-vis that particular party lang. But if it's not notarized, then you can't enforce that contract as against third parties, against the world, lalo na buyer in good faith. So it's quite important that you make sure that whenever you transact in real estate, it be notarized. That's how important it is. Yeah.
And before that, Rod, another thing that every buyer of property should remember, if property is being sold to you, real property meaning land or condominiums, make sure that it's in writing. Kasi importante yan, it has to be in writing in order to be enforceable in court. And then, of course, another helpful tip, if you're the seller, make sure that you make it explicit in the contract. Kunwari, you're afraid na hindi ka babayaran ng buo, and you want to make sure that the ownership is not transferred to the buyer until the buyer pays the whole property in full. Then you should indicate in the contract of sale that transfer of property or the ownership of the property will only take place upon full payment of the purchase price. Kasi that's normally the common mistake. Nakalagay lang talaga that the buyer buys and the seller sells a certain type of property, nakalagay yung description doon. And then, pero the actual arrangement is only hulugan, meaning installments. If that happens, then the seller cannot really take the property back. And the remedy of the seller would be to file a case against the buyer in order to compel the buyer to pay the rest of the balance.
Right.
Pag ganon, takes so much time, di ba? Mawi-waste yung cost, and sometimes the property appreciates, nagmahal na yung property by the time natapos yung case. So be careful then, sellers.
Quite important to read all the terms. No? And for those who have friends who are foreigners and who are married to one, well, foreigners, as a general rule, foreigners cannot own property. No? So they cannot purchase property. There are certain exceptions to the rule. When they buy, for example, they're purchasing a condo, they can buy a condo, but the total ownership of that condominium corporation should not exceed 40% in foreign ownership. And one important thing, if you're married to a Filipina, you can actually inherit. So one of the exceptions to the restriction on foreigners owning property is through inheritance. So you can inherit if you're married to a Filipina. And also, lastly, when it comes to foreign ownership, if you're Filipino and you lost your citizenship, let's say became an American citizen or a Canadian citizen or a Singaporean citizen, it doesn't matter. You don't lose your property just because you changed citizenship. So you retain that property. And there's also, the law allows you, even if you've already become a citizen of another country, allows you to purchase lands here under certain restrictions, one of which is you can only purchase 1,000 square meters. There you go.
Okay, and you have to execute that affidavit that you will use
that you're going to be live here. Yeah, that's right. All right, we received some comments about last week's show on our social media page. Twitter user attorney_Zhang tweeted last week, now watching at Legal HD discussion on pre-need plans. Very informative, even for lawyers like me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Attorney Zhang. Now it's Creer Maricor sent this to us on our Facebook page. It was by chance that I watched this show. I find it educational and enlightening about legal matters. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And while John Mark Bacolod naman, is that correct? John Mark Bacolod also sent us this over Facebook. Great show, very informative. It's a new habit for me. For me, one, legal essence and complexities simplified for the common Pinoy. More power to your show. Thank you very much, John from Bacolod. Are you John from Bacolod or John Bacolod? I think that's a family name is Bacolod.
Baka from Bacolod din,
all right.
no? But I really appreciate these people who send their comments. So for those of you out there, continue to share your comments.
Yeah, and it's not just you. We also learn. No? We bring in experts here to come in and to shed light on some topics that sometimes we don't know everything. So it's also very informative for us. So thank you very much for
for
those
guests. People who actually have questions or want us to take on other legal issues, then feel free to send us a message on Facebook or email us or send us messages via Twitter at LegalHD, and we'll make sure to cover your topic and we'll invite someone either from the government or some experts to help us answer your questions.
All right. Thank you very much. And unfortunately, that's all the time that we have for tonight. We would like to thank our guest who was with us earlier, and to all our viewers who sent us their questions via social media. I'm Attorney Rod Nepomuceno.
And I'm Attorney Karen Jimeno. If you have any questions regarding our topic for today, you may send them via our Facebook or Twitter accounts. Join us again next Monday as we discuss your legal rights. Good night.